Hello everybody, Claire Fluffle here, and Switch 2 announced! Oh my gosh! And before anybody who doesn't know any better, I'm not gonna blame you if you don't. But if you're wondering, oh come on Claire, don't you be talking to me about leaks and rumors and stuff. Don't you worry! The official Nintendo Twitter posted a localized tweet as such. This is Furukawa, president of Nintendo. We will make an announcement about the successor to Nintendo Switch within this fiscal year. It has been over 9 years since we announced the existence of Nintendo Switch back in March 2015. We will be holding a Nintendo Direct this June regarding the Nintendo Switch software lineup for the latter half of 2024, but please be aware there will be no mention of the Nintendo Switch successor during that presentation. Guys, it's Switch 2! So with this information, I want to ask the most important question, of course. What are we going to glean from this for the future of Kirby and Kirby Speedrunning? Well, okay, mostly Kirby Speedrunning. That's the big thing that, you know, I'm really into. Of course, before I go any further, I have to ask, please, if you wind up enjoying the video or you're excited for Switch 2 and the sake of Kirby Speedrunning and such, please give the channel a subscribe and like the video if you enjoy it. Both things really help me out. And if you would like to go the extra mile, you can check out my Patreon, linked in the description, to become a Puptrin and get neat perks, including early access to videos, even this one, as technically short notice as it was. Special thanks to my head-patting Fluffle fan Puptrins, Biohazard, Velofar, the Serval that likes strawberry Pop-Tarts, Lydia Scribe, and Freakish Uproar. I love you all. So let's start with what new Kirby games we can expect. So there's technically two things that I'm taking from this announcement in terms of Kirby. Let's start with the first one, which is the new Kirby games that we can maybe expect. This is all, of course, going to be theoretical. Don't take this as gospel or anything. But since Forgotten Land's launch, we have gotten 3 kinds of games. 3D platformers, such as Kirby and the Forgotten Land, 2D platformers, such as Return to Dreamland Deluxe, and a spin-off with Kirby's Dream Buffet. Thus, we can kind of split this into 4 categories even, if we take the 2D platformer and sub-split that into original 2D platformer and remake. The 3D platformer, that one could really go in any direction, and that's very exciting, but if we're comparing it to the previous games, it could specifically go one of 2 ways. Sticking to the style of Forgotten Land being more about exploration with fewer and simpler abilities. The ability upgrades and boss rushes are likely here to stay, the boss rush especially, that's a series staple, but anything else that Forgotten Land introduced, or of course anything new that they're going to introduce, that's all fair game. Taking inspiration from the series' history and opting for a more combat-oriented sequel is also very possible, with larger ability movesets like Superstar and Battle Royale. Likely there's going to be more abilities too than the smaller, limited pool that we saw in Forgotten Land. If they opt for the version that's more like Forgotten Land, I would imagine the speedrun would be pretty similar. It would of course depend on what abilities make it in, but slide kicking would still probably be very strong like in the original, and routing for Waddle Dees plus normal Kirby's combat and level-specific quirks would matter just as much, if not more, than ability use for movement and bosses. The Kirby Superstar or Kirby Battle Royale version would obviously be completely different from Forgotten Land. Likely we'd see less ability variety without intensive care for ability balancing, which, let's be honest, they never really care about ability balancing. But the cheesy skips and tricks that you could pull off in a 3D platformer would be way crazier than what Forgotten Land has, especially when we factor in bosses. Now, if we look at a 2D Kirby remake, I think this one is pretty obvious myself. After Return Deluxe did well enough to nearly break 1.5 million in sales, hopefully the next ones to come are Treble Deluxe and or Planet Robobot. Who knows if they'd be as identical as Return Deluxe wound up being to the original, at least in terms of the any % speedrun, but if it's also anything like Return Deluxe, changes to bosses and the 100% speedrun, as well as new modes, would make things very interesting. A lot of people have bought up Triple Deluxe having a Taranza mode, and Planet Robobot having a Suzy mode, similar to how Return Deluxe had a Magolor mode, and yeah, I see no reason to doubt that, and I think those would be really, really cool. As far as a new 2D game goes, that would heavily depend on the gimmicks and such, but I would assume that it would closer lean in the direction of Triple Deluxe or Planet Robobot long before Return to Dreamland, or even Star Allies. The main difference between Return and Triple Deluxe Robobot is ability movement and general strength. These largely revolve around levels and the room sizes being smaller, not shorter, just literally smaller, in Triple Deluxe and Robobot because, you know, 3DS screen space versus a literal monitor for the Wii. as well as the bosses mostly not having any post-hit invincibility, like in Return where they had like a ton of it. As far as Star Allies is concerned, that game just went crazy with making abilities super strong, adding elements and helpers and such, as well as buffing nearly every dash attack for abilities in that game, even if we don't include elements. They would likely want to revert to something less, I don't know, broken. Although, if the 3D games continue a less action-y trend, maybe the 2D originals could go in the opposite direction. Who knows? Again, that's why this is so exciting. As for what speedrun we could expect for a spin-off, that could literally be anything. I have no predictions on this. My only guesses are another Kirby Clash, because of course we get another Kirby Clash, a Day-to-Day Drum Dash Deluxe 2 because of my intense copium, or the Kirby RPG that people have wanted for years, since HAL has stated they want more variety compared to the OG Return to Dreamland era. I wouldn't know anything about the speedrun for this since there's nothing to go off of. I'd imagine battles wouldn't be very important. You would just want to focus on getting through quickly and overpowering enemies with whatever the strongest ability is. But again, I don't know. So that's for the new stuff, but to me, the most exciting part would actually be the potential for backwards compatibility. We have no idea if the Switch 2 will be backwards compatible or not. We're just gonna have to wait and see on that. But, this is a big but. If it is, that would be huge for lots of Switch games. Now, of course, including the Kirby's. By far the most improved game for the speedrun, honestly probably even the casual experience, would be Star Allies. Literally every category could benefit for this. This game has so many load screens that take forever, even on digital. For some reason, digital games take less time to load than physical. I don't know why. But with stronger hardware would come shorter load times, presumably. Even for modes with IGT, not having to deal with the long loads as you're playing them would be huge. And this obviously goes for all of the Switch Kirby's, as well as this next point that I'm going to make, except for Fighters 2 technically. But again, Star Allies would say the biggest improvement on this. Would the Switch 2 be powerful enough to run these games at 60 FPS? Personally, I could care less about the frame rate in my games. I'm totally fine with Star Allies and Forgotten Land and Dream Buffet and Kirby Clash, whatever. With that said, I have one exception to this, and that's obviously speedrunning. High-level tricks are just made so much easier and more consistent with 60 FPS compared to 30. And yeah, technically the flow of the game would be faster, which could help save time, and combine that with shorter load times we were talking about before, KSA would become a changed game, and for the better. Especially because this isn't one of those garbage, oh look, I turned my TV settings to 60 FPS, now this game just looks like absolute trash. And unlike the mods that remove the frame rate limit, which, I mean, okay, those are actually good, but they're not legal for speedrunning, so like, meh. Forgotten Land also gets a pretty drastic change too, although not quite to the same extent. The game already has really fast load times, like sure, faster load times than what we already have. Technically nice, but kind of whatever. The simpler abilities mean the frame rate improvement doesn't help with tech all that much, and the routing of the Waddle Dees, which is really important for this game, wouldn't really change. The only two differences that come to mind would be, if you complete a mission and enter a loading zone, it takes longer because it has to load in the message. And this may be improved, but it seems to be an issue with the game itself and not really with the Switch hardware, so I don't think this would actually even happen. More importantly, the 60 FPS would make HSJ, or Hammer Super Jump, a crucial glitch for speedruns that lets you vertically go out of bounds and skip huge chunks of levels, way more consistent and easy to pull off. As it is, enough people quit to speedrun of Forgotten Land any percent just because of this glitch, to make a separate any percent with the only difference being no HSJ. This exists on speedrun.com. If you go to the category extensions, it's there. As for the spin-offs and the older games available on NSO, I don't see a lot changing. Load times for KF2 and Super Kirby Clash are kind of annoying, so I'm going to be happy to see those get improved. Dream Buffet load times are a lot better off, though. I don't really think that would be too bad. The only notable improvement here would be 60 FPS, but even that would mean more for SKC, as inputs in Dream Buffet are much simpler. Basically, Super Kirby Clash would get a few nice improvements, Fighters 2 would get better load times, Dream Buffet would get a frame rate improvement. And this isn't a spin-off, I just realized I didn't talk about Return Deluxe. I literally don't think anything would change about that game, just because of how the load screens work, and maybe the frame rate improvement would be nice, I don't know, but yeah, there you go, I forgot about Return Deluxe. Oops. As for the old games on NSO, such as Superstar, Amazing Mirror, Adventure, that stuff, these wouldn't get any changes at all. The big focus on those is accuracy to the original hardware, and while there are lots of problems with the way NSO works, as far as speedrun viability goes specifically, they're all really legit. They may not all be the fastest, but as far as legitimacy goes, yeah, they're really good. They're only faster due to a very slight frame rate improvement. While there are specific exceptions depending on the game, largely they're the same. So I wouldn't see or really even want this changing much at all. I'm really looking forward to more news on the Switch 2, and for that Direct talking about Switch games later this year. That's gonna be fun. Whatever happens, I just hope the Kirby games we get are still good and fun. Some are definitely better than others, but Kirby on the Switch was genuinely amazing. We got games like Superstar Sacker overseas for the first time. We got an easily playable tilt and tumble that didn't sacrifice the gyro controls. We got fun spin-offs like Fighters 2. We got great remakes like Return Deluxe. We literally got Forgotten Land here. Like, how can you not say Kirby on the Switch was something else? I'm looking forward to the future for Kirby. I am also looking forward to the future of my videos, so I'm gonna get back to work on those. I have been Claire, thank you all so much for watching, and please, Switch 2, please be backwards compatible so that Fire Emblem Engage loads faster. That's like the one big issue I have with that game left. I love Fire Emblem Engage so much, and I want to play it more. Please, 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 please.